which leads me into my latest trip, which I've just wrapped up. But I do value each trip for different reasons. And this trip was also fantastic because I do like just going at my own schedule, going at my own pace, and doing whatever. I didn't actually plan this trip with a lot of notice. A week and a half prior to this trip, I just randomly looked up one of my favorite musicians, Duff McKagan, and noticed that he was playing in Boston and New York. And I do want to go back to Boston as well, but I started pricing it, and Boston was just going to be more expensive. And I like New York a lot. So to pay less money and go to New York, it just seemed like a no brainer. Once I had figured out what I was going to do and where I was going to go, I do like to leave things fairly loose as far as my schedule. Now, keep in mind, I do plan out my trips, but I keep it very loose. So I flew into New York without an exact way to get to the hotel that I needed to get to. But anyone with a little bit of common sense realizes there's buses, there's Uber, there's taxis, there's all kinds of ways. I wasn't worried about that. So I just basically flew in, and then first option, because it's the cheapest, I went and looked for the buses, found the buses, and then, found out what exit I should get off on, and I jumped on the exit. But while I was going there, I realized that if I got off earlier, I'd be closer to Central Park. And again, I had a lot of time to wait until I got to the hotel because I couldn't check in until 4 o'clock. So I got off early, got off in Harlem, walked over to Central Park. I will say, I feel like there's a lot made of Harlem, and I'm sure it used to be worse back in the day, and I'm sure it's a lot better than it is now. But it still has a bit of a stigma. And even when I was at the comedy show, the guy was joking around that he's from Harlem, and it's not a good place to be. And you kind of wonder how much is just being talked up about that and how much of it is real. But I will say, I did find some humor in this little old white lady walking down in Harlem with a Black Lives Matters shirt on. And I was chuckling because I was thinking to myself, if you are scared of Harlem, that's probably a good way for a little old white lady to approach it as she's walking down Harlem. To me, everyone was very nice. But again, 6 feet tall, people don't usually go out of their way to start stuff. So sometimes my perception on things isn't the same as someone that's 5 foot nothing. And as I came out of Harlem and I got to the park, honestly, I was just like, this is perfect. I sat down by one of the little lakes they have in there, and it's just so beautiful. And it was perfect weather. It was 21, 22. It was like t-shirts and shorts weather. I actually couldn't believe how warm it was, and kind of wish I had brought some shorts. But again, I hadn't even checked into my hotel yet, so I wouldn't have had anywhere to put all the extra clothes and stuff like that. So it was great, and honestly, I enjoyed walking through the trees and the forest areas that had still had lots of color on it, and just honestly made my way eventually to Times Square. And at that point, decided that I was going to hit a Olive Garden. Not my first choice, and I was also thinking I don't want to hit a chain restaurant in New York, but I couldn't get into the hotel yet, so I also thought they have clean washrooms, so it's a good place to go have lunch. And I was actually shocked that I think I spent $29 at the Olive Garden, and most of the time I was eating street meat, and it was still coming to close to $20 for the street meat. So for $9 more, I could go to the Olive Garden. But you don't go to New York for the Olive Garden. You go to New York for the flavor, the stuff that makes it special. Pizza, street meat, all that good stuff. And again, it was pretty much last minute, week and a half. I didn't really tell a lot of people what my plans were. So I was having a little bit of fun on some social media, sending out some pictures as I was going, kind of saying, guess where I am. I did this one other time when I did a trip to Pittsburgh to see the Pirates. And all I did was take a picture of the little game that you get in Cracker Barrel and nothing else. There was nothing to show what city or whatever I was in, just the game. And I posted it saying, guess where I am. And someone literally replied, Pittsburgh Cracker Barrel. And they know that I like traveling to baseball games, so that's why they knew the city. But it was just so fast. I expected them to guess Crackle Barrel, but I did not expect them to guess Pittsburgh immediately. So I thought I would have some fun and do that again. So I started posting some pictures, and it was about the 12th person that guessed exactly where I was. And I was enjoying that as I was traveling. But I also sent a text to a friend with a picture, and right as I was sending the picture, I was startled because I'm in Times Square, and this guy, which is kind of famous, but I was still startled, basically jumped out at me with his guitar with Trump all over it and basically naked, just wearing his underwear. And when you're not really paying attention to your surroundings and some guy in his underwear just kind of jumps out at you and starts grabbing your shoulder and grabbing your attention and stuff like that, I will say it did take me a second, and I was thrown. And if there's anyone listening to that, they might be guessing that is the naked cowboy. I wasn't paying attention, and I know a lot of people know of him, and he is well known for being there, just like Tickle Me Elmo and the ladies in the Mickey Mouse suits and Spider-Man and all of that. But I was not expecting a naked man. As the reason I was in New York was to see Duff McKagan, which is the bassist for Guns N' Roses, I was wearing a Guns N' Roses t-shirt. And that's what got his attention, and that's why he came over and started talking to me, is because he appreciates Guns N' Roses as well. And it was actually a nice interaction, but I was just startled at first. So one of the other interactions that kind of jumped out at me and kind of surprised me was just a real quick one, but it caught me off guard. Later on that night, I went to the subway because I was going to take the subway down to the show. And as a Canadian, we don't use the swipe part of our visas very often. And when you don't use that on your credit cards, they don't typically work. So when I went to the subway, it wanted me to insert it because it wasn't using the chip, which we're used to, or tapping. And it didn't have that technology on the machine. So I was having issues getting my pass. So I decided that I was going to go back up, find a bank machine because it would accept cash, and then I would come back and try it again. Later on, I found out that you can just get on the actual subway and tap with your credit card because there's a machine now on the entrances where you can tap, but I didn't know this at the time. Anyhow, as I was coming out, this beer beer can came flying through the lady's skirt in front of me, and I had no idea what was going on, and then just exploded at the bottom of the stairs. And I literally had no idea what was happening. But as I got to the top of the steps, I realized it was a homeless man that had just launched this thing down the thing, and it literally went through the lady's skirt and basically nicked my hand as it went screaming past. And it was just definitely one of those New York experiences. But besides the lady and me, nobody even pays attention, just carries on, which is so New York. So after I had gone through all of that and got some money for the machine, I actually decided not to even use the subway. I decided to walk because I was honestly pretty excited about the concert I was going to see. I'm not really going to talk about that on this video because I have a whole other video about that day and more breakdown, and talk a lot about the concert and what it means to me and that. So if you're interested, please head over to that video when you're done watching this one. I've never actually done a bus tour up until this trip in New York. I have done bus tours in other cities. I found them fantastic and I really enjoyed it. I definitely did one in Philadelphia. I think I did it I definitely did it in Las Vegas and some other cities that I've been to. I never had the desire to do it in New York, but I just felt this time just to do something different, it would be good. And I've kind of come to an appreciation over that time since my original trips about bus tours. Because you learn a little bit of history, you learn a little bit of stuff that you just wouldn't know unless it's basically force fed to you. And that part of the information I do enjoy, as well as just being able to sit back and relax. Because New York, the traffic can be quite busy. And after the first day of just go, 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 I knew the second day I was going to take the bus tour. I did have some, big plans of doing the night tour, and with my package, it also gave me this special one in the morning to go over and see this other area. And I didn't do that. I got it in the package. It just got so cold by the second night on the evening, and the traffic was so bad. It just took us forever to get back. And by that time, I was just hungry and wanted to eat. And I had the comedy show coming up at 9 o'clock. And I really wanted to be on the last tour by, it was either 5 or 6 o'clock, I can't remember, so that I could be back in time. But after struggling to get back in time for that one and it getting colder, and knowing that I would want to go get a heavier, sweatshirt and stuff like that for the tour, that I was best of just cutting that out. So I didn't get my second night tour that I was looking forward to, because I did think it was going to be very nice to do that at nighttime. Instead, what I did after I went and had some supper and I went and watched the comedy show, I went for a walk into some of the areas like Brant Park, and it was quite enjoyable to go see those areas at nighttime. And I just tried to walk down different streets that I hadn't walked down yet, and it was very enjoyable. So one of the things that I was going to tell a story about was, I mentioned about the comedy show, and just like the year I had come before, I ended up being part of the show. Being a large white guy, of course, I got pegged as the Trump supporter, which anyone knows me is as far away from the truth as possible. But whatever makes the show funnier, I am all for. So a couple of the comedians definitely had fun at my expense, using me in that term, and I was totally good with it. There was quite a few back and forth interactions with the crowd on some of the people that were there, but definitely they seemed to like me a lot, which, again, I don't try to heckle or do any of that stuff because I just appreciate what they're doing. I did make a smart aleck comment to one point because he asked everyone what they were afraid of, and honestly, there's not a lot that really truly gives me fear. So I didn't really have a good answer, and I just said comedians, and he just looked at me and was just kind of like, "Get out of here." And it was funny though, because there was these guys, and they were from an area on the other coast, which is known for gangs, and they were playing into it, and they were joking around with a comedian about the fact that they were kind of these gang guys. And when they were talking about fears, all their fears were like the softest little things possible. And the comedian eventually called them out on it. He's like, "Wait a second. You guys are big, tough gang guys, and you're afraid of clowns." And I can't remember some of the other things, but they were all just the softest things. And it was absolutely hilarious. That comedian in particular was probably my favorite, but there was two that just absolutely killed. And there was another two that were very, very good. I'm pretty sure I'd seen clips of all of them online in the past. So that doesn't hurt to kind of have a little bit of a reference point to begin with. The one comedian made a great joke about the fact that he had reached his lifelong goal of performing for 38 people in a comedy club in New York after 10 years of work. I do appreciate people that can joke and laugh at themselves, and I try to joke and laugh at my own expense as well. Earlier in the day, I'd also seen a bunch of things that make me want to go back to New York. Like they had the big aircraft carrier sitting in the bay, I guess it is, and it looked pretty neat because they had some really cool aircraft sitting on the deck. And that made me want to go see that. And there was a couple other things I wanted to go see. Um, Earlier in the day, I'd also got out and walked Little Italy and Chinatown and just got to see and have some fun in those areas. And it just adds to the experience when you get in and out, and just even all the people coming up to you trying to get you to buy their stuff on the side of the street, or just the interactions and watching the people with the different interactions. It's just so much fun. And I realized, as there's so many things like that aircraft carrier that I'd like to see, and there were some other things I can't think of at the moment that I really want to go back and see, that I'll probably make trips every so often to New York for the rest of my life, just because there's so much there to see. And there's no point in trying to push it all into a day or two and not enjoy the moments just because you're trying to rush from one thing to another, when you can kind of sit back and be like, you know what, I'll be back. Let me just enjoy this moment. And I think on that statement, I'm going to end this video. It's only halfway through the bus tour. The bus tour is great, but I'll be back and I'm going to enjoy it. And I'll have more stories to add to this. So, in short, if you want to watch more about this trip, I have a video that details it a little bit more for this specific trip. But I'll be back, and just enjoy the moment.